Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Rebecca. If you haven't been here before, welcome. So in today's video we are going to be talking all about Hulu's Only Murders in the Building season 5 episode 6, Flatbush. So if you are not all the way caught up, if you haven't watched all the episodes, then make sure to pause this, go watch, catch up, and then come back, because this is going to be full spoiler. We're going to be talking about the clues and like some theories for who I think the murderer is this season. So if you like this kind of video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification, all that good YouTube stuff. I am trying to hit 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and we're getting there, but I need a little bit of help. So make sure to subscribe, share this video with friends, family, whoever likes Hulu's Only Murders in the Building, and make sure to leave a comment down below and like. It really helps. Every little bit counts. And yeah, it just helps push the video a little bit farther on YouTube. I appreciate you guys. I love you. And with that, let's get into this week's video. So like I said, the episode is called Flatbush, and immediately out the gate we see a Tosca record in Rainy's home, and we see the Madame Butterfly poster, which are two things that we talked about, I think, in episode 2 or 3 of this season. So this is not the first time we've seen Tosca. But this is a famous opera, which makes sense because Rainy is an opera singer. And we are moving through the beginning, and we see that Sophia is also playing Tosca, and we're seeing like their family photos. The Nona is throwing peanut shells at Sophia for some reason, and I'm not sure if that is Sophia's mother or her grandmother. But yeah, that's happening. And then Loretta is narrating, and we see the Tosca record in her apartment as well. So that's Tosca times 3. And this is interesting because like we haven't really seen Loretta this season. This is like her first time back. And this possibly signifies that there is something between all 3 women that relate them. We already assumed that that Sophia and Rainy had things in common. They both have husbands who have passed away. They're both widows. Their husbands work together. And we had some suspicions in previous videos about them, but we didn't see any sort of connection with Loretta yet. So we're going to kind of dive into that this video and see if we can figure out why are they all having this Tosca record playing. So really quick, I wanted to give you the storyline of what Tosca is about, just so you can get an idea of like what we're talking about here. I'm going to do it as quickly as possible, and if I miss anything, feel free to comment down below and let me know. I'm not the most knowledgeable opera person, or really an opera person at all, so if you're a fan of opera, give us a comment down below and let us know what you think of Tosca. But basically Tosca is about like a warring time in Italy, and there's this man, Angelotti. He's a political prisoner, and he escapes and goes and hides in this church. And in this church is Mario Cavarotti or something like that, and he's an artist working on a painting within the church. Tosca is Mario's girl, and she comes in the church and basically immediately off the bat suspects that Mario is cheating on her and like has been canoodling with another woman, if you will. But really what Mario was doing was speaking to Angelotti. So then we kind of are moving through the play, and Scarpia is this corrupt police chief, and he's searching the church for Angelotti, this political prisoner. And Mario has left, Angelotti has left, and Tosca comes in and she's looking for Mario again. And apparently Angelotti had like clothing, women's clothing, that he was planning on using as a disguise, and he's kind of abandoned some of that. So when Tosca comes in looking for Mario, the police chief, who likes Tosca and wants her for his own, is like, oh hey Tosca, like I found this women's clothing in the church. And she's like, aha, I knew Mario was cheating on me, that jerk. And so she kind of like races off. And Scarpia's like, oh, I have this plan in place. I want Tosca for my own, and like this is how I'm going to do it. And so later on the police catch Mario and they start questioning him. And he's like, Tosca, like, don't tell them anything, like right before he goes in to be questioned. And so she is like silent. She's sitting there, and Scarpia's like, well, we're going to torture him if you don't give us what we want. So eventually she gives up Angelotti. They capture him, and Scarpia's like, we are going to execute Mario unless you submit to me and like be mine. So Tosca's like, fine, I'll be yours. Write like a letter saying that like me and Mario can leave and like run away together after this and are free from any sort of like political attack, or like we're free from the police, we're free to leave. So he writes up this piece of paper. He's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then he's like, okay, now you have to be with me. And she stabs him and takes the paper and runs. And so she comes to Mario and she's like, hey, this execution's going to be fake, but like make sure you make it look really real. And in the end, he ends up actually being executed. And Tosca is brokenhearted that Mario is dead. And she ends up taking her own life and like jumping off of the top of the building. But what I want to concentrate on in this story is this beginning portion of suspicion that she has. And it's like, it's unsupported and it's not real. She's suspicious of her partner and her lover off of the bat, even though he actually never did anything wrong and never cheated on her. And I think that that is a theme that we're going to see in this season, like this like suspicion of marriage, either from Rainey or Sophia. And then also what is clear is this police corruption, which we're already seeing this season. It's been clear in past seasons, but they're reinforcing it. Scarpia is this corrupt police chief. So moving on from that, we see a broken window as if someone has purposely set Loretta's place on fire, which I think we all know is probably true, and her place burns down. So today's episode is kind of surrounding homes and like what is a home, what makes a home. So we go to Oliver and we see his offer letter for his place, and there's this anonymous buyer that wants to purchase it. So I'll put it up on the screen so you can read it for yourself. But really the offer letter is just letting Oliver know that there's an anonymous buyer who wants it. He will pay a lot of money for it. He will not have the place, like he will forego any sort of inspections. He just wants the place and he wants it now. And there's like 8 months before this offer expires. So it's time sensitive and this guy wants it. Oliver greets Loretta as she's coming in, and she's been clearly crying. You know, she's upset that all her stuff is gone and that her place burned down, and she flew right home when she was told that this happened. And the police have said to her that it was her electric tea kettle that caused the fire, which we're pretty sure isn't true, because that broken window, it really looks like someone like threw something into her home to start the fire. So is this another example of police corruption in the show? Probably. They're covering something up, which begs the question, why did Loretta's place need to be set on fire? Anyway, Oliver's trying to make Loretta feel better, so he shows her the new wedding gifts. He's like, look, we have new stuff. She's like, I miss my old stuff. So she's really, you know, struggling here, which is understandable. Like, if everything that you once owned was taken from you, you would probably be upset too. Charles and Mabel show up to go over the podcast, and they give her a hug and they comfort her. Actually, what happens is Charles like holds his arms out to her and she just, you know, walks around him. Very Charles. And they're going over their new suspects for the case, Rainey and Sophia. And Sophia did end up giving Charles his phone back, so that's good. And he's kind of like, well, she hasn't called since, so clearly, like, it's for the best because she's a murderer kind of thing. So the concentration of this episode is going to be Rainey and Sophia and what was in the bag that Sophia gave to Rainey. And Loretta says, you know, I want to play Emily Lawler. I'm having a bad day. It's someone that she played on a past show. And she just doesn't want to be herself today because she's been having a rough time, a rough go of it. So she's like, let me go. Me and Oliver will go to Flatbush. He'll show me his childhood home. And the widows don't know me, so I'll go undercover and see what I can find out. And Loretta convinces Oliver to take her to Brooklyn so they can go and investigate. Next, Detective D arrives, and she's here to pick up the finger to run an analysis on it. And they realize that the finger is gone. And so they go back to Charles's apartment. There are no signs of forced entry, although we know about the secret passageways, which they don't seem to talk about, but it wouldn't be that hard. The only thing that's left that's out of place in Charles's home is a scuff mark on the floor, but he says that it could have been him because he's got these new boots with a rubber sole, and he's thinking like, oh, these could have left a mark. My immediate thought was robot, maybe? But it's hard to tell when they do these like little clues, like there's no way to know exactly what it is. So the finger could have been stolen anytime within the last week, and we see that Charles is still on last gasp. He is messaging a person named Priscilla, and he's wearing this diamond earring. He's, Charles is really going through a metamorphosis, if you will. And he's talking to this woman. Dee's like, is she a murderer? Has she done a hit and run recently? Like, what's the gag here? And Charles is like, haha, very funny, but that's why I'm online dating, because I've met so many bad people in real life. I figured my best bet was to go online, which, questionable. So next, Oliver and Loretta are in Flatbush, where we learn that he was actually a foster kid and he didn't have the happiest life growing up. And a couple of you have pointed out that this is Oliver being a cuckoo chick. Rainey calls him a cuckoo chick, and like he was abandoned by, or we don't know exactly what happened, but he was raised by parents who were not his own. He was in a foster care system, so we don't know exactly what happened there, but this is kind of relating back to his like bird counterpart. He starts to have flashbacks of him as a child. So it seems like this season is going to be Oliver's season. We got to know Mabel in some ways. We got to know Charles and his past in some ways. It's Oliver's turn. We are going to get to know him a little bit better. So immediately they see that Rainey's house is up for sale, and they're going to go to the open house and search for clues. Very convenient. And Charles and Mabel are like, okay, we're going to go check on the robot, Lester, to see, if there's any video footage of someone breaking into Charles's apartment. And they run into Thea, and she's playing her own song and dancing in the elevator. So everyone but Mabel is really vibing out to this like generic pop song. And Thea ends up saying that she was actually looking at the 14th floor last night, or maybe not last night, but recently. She was doing shrooms with Seth Rogen, and she saw a light moving around the 14th floor. And her and Seth decided to go and see the 14th floor, see if they could see what was happening. And they saw a light under the door, and the door number was 14C. So that's obviously Charles's apartment. And so she was like, I was there, I saw this light under the door. I was pretty high, but I don't feel like I was hallucinating. Dee tells Mabel that she needs to talk to Thea and get the information out of her. And she can tell that they had like some sort of middle school blow up. But she says, I know that because I was a teenage girl once, but then I got titties and so did you. So we grow up and we get over it. Like, you're a grown woman, pull it together. You're not in middle school anymore, kind of thing. So we go back to Oliver and Loretta, and there is an off-limits room in the house, having the open house, and we can hear Tosca playing. And so Loretta goes into this off-limits room to search and look for this bag, but almost immediately Rainey comes out of nowhere and is like, this room is off-limits, and she's got like a dagger. And Loretta is like, oh my gosh, like I'm Emily Lawler, I heard you playing VC Dart, and I love Tosca, and I played the lead in college or something. So just to talk about VC Art, because that's the song that was playing. It is sung by Tosca. And it's when she is at the mercy of this evil police officer, Scarpia. And it's basically a song of her asking, like, God why he has forsaken her and why he's letting this happen to her. She's like, why are bad things happening to me? Like, it's kind of like lamenting the situation that she's in. And so it's just interesting that it once again relates back to those corrupt police officers and someone like being at their mercy, being trapped. So Rainey and Loretta, who she thinks is Emily Lawler, relate over Tosca, and Rainey's like, this is actually Floria Tosca's dagger, and it was the real one that was used in the last play at the Met. And, you know, Lester came across it at a police repo and he bought it for my 10th anniversary with him. So, again, interesting, more police talk. Why was Lester at a police repo? You know, did he have some sort of connection with the cops? Like, was he actually, you know, going undercover? Was he wearing a wire? Was he covering the Velvet Room and trying to get details on like mob activity? So Rainey says that she was lucky to have Lester in her life and that like she felt like she was the lucky one. And it really shows her love and her loss here. And we go back to Oliver downstairs and he's going through Rainey's stuff. And he ends up flashing back to begging his foster parents to come to the play that he is in, that we kind of learn about a little bit later. And it's funny because we see this case of beer, and I was thinking that this is probably related to why Oliver hates beer. I think he calls it a peasant's drink. And it's like every time, like Saz showed up with beer, and then Jay Fluke showed up with beer, and every time they do, Oliver's like, oh my God, like, please stop bringing beer to my house. But it seems like maybe it relates back to his childhood and his foster dad being like a big drinker. Okay, so Loretta asks Rainey why she's like selling the house, and obviously this is related to the fact that Loretta just lost her home in a fire, and she's like, I would think that you'd want to stay with like in your home with all your stuff when you just lost your husband. And Rainey's kind of like, you'd think that, but actually the only thing I want is him. Like, none of this stuff matters to me, and I can't even afford to stay here. So we're kind of getting a gist that like Rainey isn't Tommy the Tongue, because having all that money taken out of that account, she would be able to afford staying in this home. Anyway, this whole exchange just kind of leads Loretta to understand that what really matters in life is not her material possessions, but her love for Oliver and the fact that they still get to be together. So they're leaving, and we see the widows meet up. They exchange the bag, and Loretta and Oliver are like, they lied to us, like, we're gonna follow them. So then we flash back to Charles and Mabel. They've found Robot Lester, and they're like, hey, we need video footage of the 14th floor because, you know, Charles had something stolen. And the robot pulls up the footage, and there's a glitch, and it doesn't show anything. And so we see like a little bit of movement, and we're like, oh, this footage has been edited or manipulated. And we especially know that it's been manipulated because Thea's like, not only what was she and Seth Rogen there, but she's saying that someone else was there. So we would at least see Thea on that floor if that was the case. So the fact that we don't see her at all really proves that the footage is edited. Also, Robot Lester like calls Howard, he's like, yes, daddy, which made me gag a little bit. So because they're looking at the footage and they don't see anything, Mabel jumps to conclusions, and she's like, Thea, you know what? You're a liar. You just want attention. You want everything to be about you. You didn't actually see anything. You know, bye. And Thea runs away really upset, and then they kind of come to the conclusion that the footage has been tampered with. And Dee's like, Mabel, you need to go apologize to Thea, and you need to go figure out like what she actually saw. The lighting in here is crazy. I apologize. So we go back to Oliver and Loretta, and they are stopped by someone on the street basically being like, hey, we're looking to get signatures to stop New York City from opening its first ever casino, and like, will you sign? And this is kind of a common occurrence in New York, that someone is like, you know, on the sidewalk wearing a vest trying to get you to sign something. So maybe we don't think too much of it at first, but once we hear the word casino, our ears are perking up. We're like, hold on a minute. They don't do anything in this show unintentionally. So the fact that someone is trying to open a legal casino in New York City is a part of this season and possibly the reason why Lester and Nikki were murdered. So we're going to come back to that at the end of this summary. So they lose Rainey and Sophia, and they end up going into Oliver's old theater because he's like, you know what? I didn't think this was going to be here. I want to show you, Loretta, where Oliver Putnam started. So in Oliver's backstory, he tells us that he was a quiet kid, and the only place he really ever felt at home was the stage and the Arconia. And he talks about his first show and how he wanted to be a part of it, but when he asked his foster parents if they would come and see it, they said no, and that he should be working to bring money into the family. So he ended up quitting. He ends up telling Loretta at the same time about the offer that he's gotten on his place and that's why he's so afraid to leave the Arconia, because it's the only place where he's really ever felt at home. Loretta drags Oliver onto the stage and is like, you know what? No, you're going to say your line here and now. Because you deserve to be happy and know that you belong anywhere that you exist. And this is the start of one of the places where you felt like, oh, I never got to do that. So he says his line. She first says this monologue, because he's like, well, if I'm going to do that, you have to say your monologue from Emily Lawler. So she does that. And then he does his line, and it is from the musical/movie Oliver, inspired by the book Oliver Twist. And so part of this is just funny because obviously that is Oliver's name. So, I think it signifies that. But this was also a movie about orphans and foster kids. And we know that that is kind of Oliver's past. So we can see how that would be related here. So the widows are slow clapping for Oliver. They didn't even realize that they were in the theater, and we are having this confrontation. So we get down to it, and Sophia's like, I was bringing Rainey Lester's cut of the money from Nikki's Arconia businesses, that's why I came to see her last week. And Rainey ends up finding out that the trio think that Lester was murdered, and she says that she gets really upset, and she's like, Lester wasn't even supposed to work that night. He was going to Oliver's wedding, and she's like, why wasn't I there? I should have been there to take care of him. And she cries and says that, that night she was at rehearsal for this play that she is doing in this theater, and that the money was to help keep the lights on at the theater. And when asked if they had any enemies, Rainey is like, no, everyone loved Lester. And Sophia is like, yes, everyone hated Nikki, kind of. So we learn that Sophia is here because she was bringing prop guns for Rainey's production, Newsies. And Rainey ends up giving Oliver Lester's bird whistle, which was found on his body at the scene of the crime. We go back to Mabel, and she is going to see Thee. Thee is throwing shoes at her. She's really unhappy and upset. And they end up making up, basically, and coming to terms with the fact that they both hurt each other, and it wasn't just a one-way street, and that it was really a misunderstanding. When Mabel's friend Zoe died, she really became depressed and pulled away from everyone in her life. And Thee became depressed because Mabel wasn't being her friend anymore. So they reconcile, and they're like, okay, we can be friends again. And during that time, Detective Dee and Charles were getting the footage from when Lester died, the night that Lester died. And it's because they saw that the footage outside of Charles's apartment was edited and manipulated, they were like, we need to check out the original Lester footage. So they're all going to Oliver's apartment to go over this footage. Oliver officially admits to Mabel, yes, I am actually going to move and leave the Arconia, and she takes it pretty well, and she's like, okay, I'm okay with it. We see that Charles is still getting messages on Last Gasp from Priscilla, and they're like, Charles, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm just, talking to Priscilla about my day, told her, about someone going into my apartment and stealing something, blah, blah, blah. And Dee and Mabel, who are setting up the footage, are like, you're being catfished. Like, what are you doing? Why are you giving away case information on a dating app? We end up also seeing the footage from the night Lester died, and it is indeed altered. And finally, Mabel takes away Charles's phone. He looks at his phone and the dating app and is like, why is the Last Gasp Peach logo the same as the logo on the security camera footage? And Dee's like, let me look it up, see who the owner is. And who is it but Bash Steed? So one of our billionaires owns both companies. And I was thinking he possibly even owns the company that creates Lester the robot. And Priscilla sends a message to Charles and says, you're such a smarty pants. Now I need to come hunt you down. So it's clear that they are currently being watched, because once they discovered that Bash owned both companies and both products, Charles got an unprompted message as if he was being watched. And it seems like it was from Bash. So that is the end of that episode. We get another discovery that Bash is the one who owns the companies, and that's how the footage was manipulated. So very interesting. But with that, I think we should dive into our theories. So just going over everything, we got a lot of information about orphans this episode and foster kids. We obviously learned a lot about Oliver. And we see the three leading ladies of the episode, Loretta, Rainey, and Sophia, all compared via this Tosca opera. So we know that Loretta was a single mother who ended up giving up Dickie for adoption, and he ended up being adopted by Ben Glenroy's parents. So I think this continues to relate to the idea that a parent and a child have been separated this season. I talked about this in my past few videos, and I think the idea is that basically someone had a child and cheated on their partner, and so their spouse thinks that that is their child, when in reality it is not. So this whole idea that like a parent and a child have been separated, we're not exactly sure in what way, but like the parent and the child don't know that they're actually related, and the kid has been being raised by a different like father is kind of the idea. And so I think that one of the main mysteries of this season is like I'm thinking that it's either Sophia or maybe Rainey cheated or had children before they met their partner, so those kids are not really their partner's kids, and that the big end of the season discovery is going to be that one of these kids finds out, or that like the real father finds out, and that is going to come to a head and possibly be why Nikki and or Lester died. I'm thinking that's more why Nikki died. So we're going to discover that someone's kid, isn't really their child by blood, and that someone else, maybe Sophia, cheated on Nikki. One of her had her sons. One of them is not actually his, and he discovered this. So that's just kind of what I'm thinking about how this is related. And with Tosca, we have this theme of cheating and suspecting that your partner is cheating on you. So maybe Sophia suspected that Nikki was cheating on her. She did say that he had that tendency, and in reality, he wasn't. And so, but in retaliation, she cheated on him, got pregnant, ended up having one of their sons, and it wasn't really Nikki's, and the father found out and confronted Nikki, and possibly that's why he died. So that's kind of a theory in and of itself. Another theory I have is that it's not the father that found out, but the child, and that the child finding out that they've been lied to their whole life, that their father isn't really their father, this person maybe being Nikki, confronts him, and that's how he dies. Next, we've got Lester's murder, which I think is kind of separate from what happened to Nikki. So we know that Lester would protect the building at all costs. We also know that early in the season, the elevator crank was mentioned as something that was keeping the residents safe. So I wonder if the person who killed Lester is the same person who offered Oliver this money for his apartment. This person wants to turn the Arconia into a casino, because we've learned that a lot of the characters are moving out of the Arconia, and that the Arconia becoming the murder building has brought prices down. So maybe this person is deciding that, like, with the building being so low cost, they can actually transform it into a casino. Possibly they already know about the Velvet Room and they know that it has that casino space in it. So they're like, let's purchase Oliver's and everyone else's, like, let's purchase all these tenants' apartments and turn the Arconia into a casino. So I think that that is definitely a possible scenario, and that this person could even be a Moriarty character for all of our seasons, because the idea that someone would purposely have people die / be murdered in the Arconia in order to drive the price point of the building lower and, like, drive the cost down and then purchase the Arconia and make it into a casino seems very likely. So it's possible that someone just took advantage of the fact that this was considered the murder building and that tenants were already moving out because of out of fear and out of the fact that their property value was going down. But it also seems likely that someone purposely made this the murder building so that they could get a better price on it and purchase it to turn it into a casino. So I think that that's definitely a possibility. And then the person who I think is the murderer this season is Mayor Tillman. And part of the reason I think this is that he would have the connections to the police department and be able to get them to be corrupt. He would have the connection with the billionaires to be able to ensure that as the fifth person in the Velvet Room the night that Lester and Nikki died, he would not be mentioned. He is one of the only people who would have why would they not mention him if they knew that he was there? Why would they cover for him? It only makes sense if it's Mayor Tillman, because he has the ability and the power to force them into silence. Not many people have the power to force billionaires into silence, but he would be able to manipulate and pull that. I think he's the one whose finger was lost, the one that they found. And I think that he pushed Bash Steed to basically steal the finger back because he doesn't want to be associated with the Velvet Room and anything that's happened. I think that's also why last episode when Charles went in for a handshake and the mayor kind of like pulled away / winced, that was a sign that he was wearing a prosthetic and that his hand was still injured. And Charles just took it as like, oh, sorry, like I have so much strength because of the testosterone I'm on, when in reality, it was the mayor's finger that was lost, and that's why he winced. And I think that robot Lester is actually the one who stole the finger from Charles's, since it's possible that because Bash owns the security footage and also this company that creates the dating profile that Charles has, that it also controls the robot, and that the robot has been collecting information, spying on the trio, and like stealing their stuff. And I think it's also possible that this is all the reason why Lester died. He knew too much. He had taken notes, and the mayor knew that he would basically be able to identify him, and he was becoming a risk, and the mayor wanted the Arconia purchased so that it could become a casino. So he was like, Lester needs to go. Like, he knew that Lester would never let that happen because he loves the Arconia so much. And Lester also had the crank, and I think the crank is a key to something in the Arconia. Like, I think it's a big part of the story. So all that to say, that's my theory. I think Mayor Tillman did it in the lobby. No, I'm just kidding. I think Mayor Tillman did it. I think it's his finger. I think that he's been manipulating the whole thing. And I think that that's potentially why Nikki died, because he's competition, since he already has this casino and someone wants to create a new one and they don't want the mob competition. But I'm going to stick with my other theory for now and say, like, Nikki died because of this secret child situation, and that Lester separately died because of the mayor wanting to purchase the Arconia, turn it into a casino, and Lester standing in his way and possibly trying to expose him. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I know it can be a little all over the place with these theories because I don't have like names to give you. I just have like overall descriptions. But if you liked it, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification, all that good YouTube stuff. Please comment down below any of your theories. I love to hear them. I love to read them. I try and respond to all of them. And I think together we could genuinely figure out who the murderer is this season. So if I missed anything, any clues, or you have any thoughts on what's happening, make sure to drop your theories in the comments down below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you next week with another video where we will try and find out who killed Lester Kaluka. Love you guys. Bye!